Hi everyone, it's Janet and welcome to my channel. Today I have part 2 of the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero February card kit. These are 5 more cards using this glamorous Art Deco kit. If you're interested in seeing part 1, just click on the link in the right hand corner and you can go see the first 5 cards. But let's get started with these next 5. They're a lot of fun. Alright, to start with, I'm going to use this Desire die from Crafter's Companion. This I picked up from Tuesday Morning. It's a very intricate die. I put it through my Crafter's Companion Gemini die cutter, which does an excellent job at getting all this detail. I did have to spend a little time poking out the remaining pieces that didn't come out initially. And then I can go ahead and trim this down. I trimmed it to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 and then put it on an A2 card base. And I use liquid glue, of course. My favorite is this Art glitter glue. It's actually called Art Institute glitter glue, but it's a great fine pointed glue that works well for this kind of scenario. Now I decided to use the inside of that die cut, and I'm going to stamp the lady image who's enjoying her martini here. And I'm going to just stamp that in black memento ink because I am going to color her. And after I'm done coloring, I will cut her out to place her back into the center. So you can see the different inks I'm using here. I use Spectrum Noir marker, and that is my go-to marker choice. They work very well for my purposes, and I enjoy all the colors I can get for a reasonable price. So you could see what I'm trying to do is create some, a fur look to her stole here. And you do this by just putting on a lighter background and then dotting it with various colors of brown. I was going for some kind of light mink. That was what I had in my mind anyway. She looks like a mink lady to me, don't you think? And then I used some navies to color her hat. And then finally a little bit of gray and a little bit of green there for her olives. And then I'm going to trim it down. Just the part around the hat. I'm going to leave the bottom part where the mink is, because I'm going to fit that back into my die cut. Now I did kind of wonder what to do with the space between her hat and her hand, and then also the very bottom of the mink part. So I decided in the end, after I put it back into, or fit it back into the bottom of the die, was to use a light blue, TB1, to fill it in. And that way I felt like it didn't stick out quite so much. And then I decided to go ahead and also do that down at the bottom of her mink area. Next, I'm going to work on the sentiment. 2 separate areas here that I'm going to stamp. One with the sentiment Ain't Misbehavin'. I'm also going to use the square that has kind of the ray appearance to it. It's a very Art Deco kind of graphic. So the Ain't Misbehavin' is going to be heat embossed with gold embossing powder, and the square is going to be done in silver. You might have noticed that I used my embossing buddy on the cardstock first. If I can remember, I will do that. And here we'll show you how I just shook on the gold embossing powder. This is Ranger Detail embossing powder in gold, and then here it is also the Ranger embossing powder in silver. These are the detail embossing powders, and they do really good with the fine stuff. Now here you can see I added some of the sequins that came in the kit, and now I'm going to put it on the A2 sized card base. And I use wet glue for this because it lets you move it around a little bit. Here's the Ain't Misbehavin' sentiment that after I cut it out, I glued them together, put it on some foam tape, and there you are. Here's a closer look at Our Lady and the finished card itself. And that is card number 1. Alright, so for card number 2, I used a Doris embosser. This is a pressure embossing folder to create this panel. It's a perfect Art Deco kind of design. This is going to be a masculine card. I was inspired by someone else who had the couple, this is the man and the lady, who were dreaming together through a thought bubble of dancing. So I thought, well, I like that idea. Let's try having him dream about his car. Because, you know, next to women, men dream about their cars, right? So I stamped all these images onto the card and then decided to hand sketch a little thought bubble with the car in it and the little bubbles going to his head. And then I decided that it had to be a red car because, I mean, that's always going to get your blood pressure up, I would think. So I colored it in 2 different tones of red, and then I will also use some white gel pen at the end to create some reflection on this car and also on the window. But you won't see that right here. I added it after I finished the card and realized that I needed to give it a little more dimension up there. Now I'm filling in the man with his skin tone and his hair and his tuxedo. And of course the sentiment says having a roaring good time. I don't know if he's having one yet, but he's sure thinking about having a good time. I used just a bit of clear Wink of Stella on the word roaring just to give it a little tiny bit of glimmer, not too much. Then the finished panel went on to a card size of 4.5 by 6 1/8, just a little bigger than an A2 because of the embossed panel size. And then last I put a little gold sequin right up there on that flourish, and that finishes this card off. I thought it turned out pretty cute, and I know that it'll be a great little birthday card. And that finishes card number 2. For card 2, I started with an A2 size black cardstock panel, and I'm going to secure it here on my glass mat. And I'm going to use a couple Vicki Boutin products for this card. You'll see here a stencil from Vicki Boutin, and I'm going to use this low tack tape to try to secure it to my glass mat. In the end, I switched over to add some additional washi tape because it wasn't quite enough to sticky enough to stick to the stencil and the glass. But it did do great for covering up the part of the stencil I didn't want to include. And so I did that. I don't have to cover everything, but the majority of it. Now you'll see here that I added some more washi tape just to make sure it was not going to move around. And now I'll show you the texture paste, or really what it is a glaze, and it's called Vicki Boutin Iridescent Glaze. I had gotten some of this as a sample from a card kit. It was a Creative Escape paper crafting card kit and really loved it. So I was super psyched to order a full-size product, and this glaze is beautiful. It's very silvery, shimmery. It is not as thick as a texture paste, so it glides on very smoothly, very easily, just using my palette knife here. And I tried to get off as much of it as I could that was excess because I don't want to waste it. And I've just about got it all off. You just want to be careful to try to get everything as even as possible. And then before it's dry, you need to pull off the stencil, and you can see the beautiful result underneath. Just gorgeous. While the glaze was still wet, I used some very fine glitter from Martha Stewart. It's iridescent glitter, and just sprinkled it on the feather and the 2 baubles to the right of the feather, just to give it some extra glamour and glimmer, and it's just so pretty on that black cardstock. When I was finished, I just knocked off the excess glitter and then set the whole panel aside to dry. It took about a half an hour for this to dry, and once it was, I put it back into my MISTI, put in some of the Embossing Buddy powder so that I can arrange my 2 images here of the man and woman who are looking at each other. And I will be embossing this with white embossing powder, which looks great and sets off nicely that silver and black that I used before in the glazing and the glitter. So I'll use Versamark for this, and then Hero Art's white embossing powder. And here is the couple after I was finished and wiped off the excess powder. Now I'm going to be working on this sentiment, and I used a vellum piece here and a oval-sized or oval-shaped die from my stash and just cut out part of the oval. The reason being is that I'm going to fold it over at the top and put it on the top of my card panel. The sentiment I chose to use here is You're the Cat's Meow, and I will heat emboss that, and then next I will stamp with Versamark again that kind of ray flourish and use the glitter silver embossing powder that came with the Hero Arts kit sometime last year. Now you're going to see that I'll fold over the top of that vellum panel, and I'm going to use a bone folder to get the crease very good. And then I will use that folded over piece to glue this to my card panel. This is a great way to add some vellum and make sure that you're not going to see where the glue is. Now after I did secure it, I also put a little glue in the center of that ray to secure it down, but I didn't need very much. And then to finish it off, I'm going to put one of those black sequins on that ray right in the middle. Just like that. I cleaned up the panel with a Tombow Mono sand eraser. This just got rid of some of the little white pieces of embossing powder that got stuck there by accident. And then I attached a piece of white fun foam to the back of my panel. I also used my Spectrum Noir black marker and just edged it so that it wouldn't show white on the sides. I didn't want that to happen. So you can see it's all black on the edges. I added a few more of the black flat sequins, and that finishes this card. So glamorous, darling. So I'm off to card 4, and I'm going to use the included stencil. I treated the back of the stencil with this Zig two-way glue, and once it dries, it's removable. And it sticks very well to your cardstock without leaving a residue. That's very helpful when you're using a stencil like this where there's a lot more white space than there is stencil, and it keeps it from moving around and allowing your colors to get underneath the stencil. Now I'm using Broken China, which is an oxide ink, and I apologize because it keeps going out of focus. I'm not sure why, but it does. So fortunately, it doesn't do this through the whole video, just at this section for some reason. I want to tell you about my brush. This is a Tim Holtz inking brush, and it's fantastic. And it's made so that when you have the brush open and used, you can pull up that metal piece so that you can get your cover on, and it keeps the brush in good shape. And also, I found that it really didn't shed at all, which I super appreciated. I'm definitely going to order more of those brushes. Now here's the finished card panel. You can see how pretty that is. I took out one of my nested scallop circle set dies here because I'm going to use it to cut a hole out of this panel, and I'm going to take out the area where it's darkest and a little bit towards the top, but not quite all the way. And then I'm going to use the largest die in this Sweetheart Doily set from Cottage Cuts to create a frame for this opening. So I'm going to take out that beautiful platinum silver cardstock that I hadn't yet used that came in this kit, and I will lay those two dies out to be as centered as possible, just eyeballing it. And then I will secure that with washi tape and run it through my cutter. I have done that now, and you can see the end result will be this beautiful filigree style frame to go around the hole in my card panel. And you'll see here that it will fit perfectly on that scallop. Really a neat image. Now we'll go ahead and add some wet glue and attach that in place. I will end up putting some white cardstock behind this just to see a little better. The glass mat made it a little hard to make sure that I had the scallops all lined up correctly. And then I went ahead and secured it. This is where, again, white glue is a great thing to use for something like this. All right, then I'm going to use some heat-resistant acetate. This is from Hot Off the Press, and it is made specifically to be heat embossed on. I use it occasionally, and it's something that's really handy every now and then. It has a backing behind the acetate, and that's what I've drawn on here using my pencil. And the reason that I want to use that is just so I have an idea of where to put my stamps, because that's going to be approximately the edge of the opening in my card panel. And the reason I want to know that is because I'm going to place again the man and the woman who are looking at each other so that their bodies are just slightly covered up by the circle or the bottom of that circle. So placement's important in that case. Now again, I use my Versamark ink and my silver fine detail embossing powder from Ranger. And I also use my embossing buddy on the acetate so that it wouldn't stick any of the particles to it. I did try to do it the way the directions for the acetate said to do it, which was to wash it or run it under water and then blot it. And I did try to do it that way, but it didn't work at all. I had all kinds of errant powder still sticking. So I went back to the old-fashioned way of, or the traditional way of using the embossing buddy, and that worked so much better. So I'm going to just stick with that method from this point on with my heat embossed acetate. Now the great thing is you can heat emboss the acetate and it doesn't curl or burn or any of that. And then just to get rid of that powder, I took a piece of tissue and wiped it off, both the front and the back, to get it nice and clean. And it really turned out very nice. You could see how pretty it is. And as you can guess, this is going to go in the window that I've created in the card panel. But first I took a piece of that silver cardstock again and cut out the center of it, because that would be just a big waste to put that beautiful paper underneath my card panel. And so I've saved a portion of it by cutting it out like that. I'll use it somewhere else, most definitely. And now my panel can go over the top and no one is the wiser. Plus I didn't want the silver showing through the window, so it's all good in the end. Now I'm going to attach the acetate, and I just used my ATG adhesive for that. This isn't a shaker card, it's just a window. And now I can go ahead and put that over the top of my image, placing it so that the bodies are covered up by the bottom of the circle. And then I can press it into place. Now I can go ahead and apply this whole panel to my card base. And I will just lay it down like that. Now I did debate whether to put any kind of sequins or anything in there, and I just decided the beautiful white and silver was enough just by itself, with all the other patterns and everything going on, and plus my sentiment that will go on next. So I used the sentiment again, "Hey there, Dollface." And this is also going to be heat embossed in silver. And I'll also use this column-like decoration at the bottom of the sentiment. I hope you enjoyed this color combination of the light blue, the white, and silver as much as I did. It is so pretty and soothing and elegant. I just love it. So once I had the embossing powder on, I heated it up, and it did warp a little bit at the bottom there. And I saved it by putting some weight on it and left it overnight, and it flattened it right out again. A silvery white bow at the top finished this card off just perfectly. So for my last card, I started by stamping in black Memento ink these images, including that ray, and then I put the lady on top of that so she has kind of a border. And I will cut all these out so that I can start coloring them. So I've sped up the coloring a lot right here to show you how I colored each of these images. I'm going to put on a little music and let you watch. Here and there I'll put up a little information about what I'm doing, but for the most part, I hope you just sit back and enjoy. Well, it's time to put my figures on my card base. Now this card base of gold, green, and peach was something that I made ahead of time. I made a bunch of these in different colors prior to starting my cards. If you want to see how I created my inlaid card bases, you can go to the video, which is linked in the right-hand corner of your screen right now. All right, so I put the lady above the other two images using some double-sided foam tape. And I had also heat embossed the Ain't Misbehaving sentiment on vellum, and I'm using a little bit of glue behind the heat embossed letters to get that to stick without being seen on my card base. You know, you're trying to avoid any glue showing. And that worked out pretty well, actually. Here's a close-up of the sentiment. I wanted to show it to you because the photography didn't really work very well, but it looks great in person. So now that that was all ready, all I have to do is put some wet glue in the back of this and attach it to a card base. I chose an A2 sized craft cardstock for that. And that finishes off this card and my series for the February Hero Arts My Monthly Card Kit. And I'll be back very soon with 10 cards from the March card kit. Take care and have a great week. Well, once again, thank you for joining me here today. I really appreciate you visiting, and I've put up here the link to subscribe to my channel and also to a couple more videos that I think you might be interested in seeing if you like this one. So I hope to see you back soon, but until then, keep crafting. Bye!